Okay, it's rap pack to my pulse flat. We keep it real, no false rap. I got 4 cars and they all black. Got 4 bras and they all that. We call that ballin'. Doing this is my calling. Flow is so appalling. My phone off and she calling. I'm like, yeah.
What's going on, internet, and welcome back to Nth-Level Entertainment, the most awesome series, comic book, and movie-related YouTube channel in South Africa. I am your host, Z the Entertainer, and today I am going to be reviewing Young Justice Season 3, Episode 1. Now, Young Justice, for those of you who know the show, it's on its 3rd season now. The first 2 seasons of the show came out, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago, and the show was actually cancelled after the 2nd season. So it's one of the shows that I've always enjoyed heavily. As I would put it up there, in terms of like if I were to make a hierarchy to it, I would put it up there with the Justice League animated series. That's a classic among a lot of geeks, a lot of people that are into comic book media and so on and so forth, and geek culture in general. That show has always stood above a lot of others in terms of rewatchability. People reference that show a lot. Rewatchability being chief among those attributes that make it such a special show. It was very well done. It carried on from the original Batman, the animated series that was produced by Bruce Timm. In fact, they ended up calling those cartoons the Timmverse or the Bruce Timmverse, because from there we had Batman, the animated series. We eventually had Superman, the animated series. We eventually had Justice League, which had all the main DC characters in it. That ran for 2 seasons, and it eventually grew to Justice League Unlimited. That ran for a further 2 seasons, where the universe of those heroes was expanded, and it was, it blew up. Basically, there was about 52 members of the Justice League, different characters within that series, and which was a nice nod also to the comic book run from DC Comics called New 52, which illustrated that there was 52 universes in the DC multiverse. So I know I'm giving a lot of backstory and exposition here, but basically this is just to illustrate how Young Justice matches up to those shows. Because soon after that, there were a few other shows that DC did, like in the animated, the Timmverse basically spawned the DCEOUM, something along those lines. It was basically DC Original Animated Movies, is what that acronym was supposed to illustrate. That flowed from the Timmverse. And the thing that was always nice about those shows is how closely they stuck to the comics, even though they creatively changed certain things for the sake of the show and the movies and all that stuff. So Young Justice was very close as far as being as good as those shows. It's a show that it was a very different take on what Justice League brought us before. The Justice League characters did feature in the show, but only to sort of give way to the younger characters that were being prominently focused on in that show. Primarily it was a show about the sidekicks, people like Robin, Aqualad, Kid Flash, Superboy. Who else was there? There was Roy Harper, who was in the comics known as Speedy. Eventually he became Red Arrow. He was also in the show. And we also had, there was a couple of others, I'm forgetting some. We also had Artemis later in season 1. So the show basically followed these specific characters' development and growth into, stepping into their own positions as, fully fledged heroes, so on and so forth. So that ran for about 2 seasons, and it was eventually cancelled. But a lot of fans like myself who enjoyed it a lot actually campaigned and complained about the fact that they wanted to come back. Petitions were signed. Warner Brothers execs were receiving a lot of mail and correspondence and things like that, until eventually the announcement was made, I think about a year or 2 ago, that it's gonna come back. But then they wanted it to coincide with DC having its own streaming service, much like Netflix and other services of the same kind, where they're going to have all of their content on there. It's actually called DC Universe. And Titans, the live-action Teen Titans show, was the first original product to come from that streaming service and their studios. So and then Young Justice Season 3 premiered on that streaming service. So that is the only legal way to watch it, to watch the episode. And they're actually releasing about 3 episodes a week. So I've seen all 6 so far, but today I'm just going to be talking about episode 1. So episode 1 basically picks up from the end of season 2. unlike the change between season 1 and 2, there isn't a 5-year time jump. We actually pick up from the events which were just before that final meeting that the Light had at the end of Young Justice season 2, where the team, as they're called, basically thwarted their plans and eventually won, and so on and so forth. So it picks up as Nightwing was admitting how much they've lost and how he wants to actually go his own way for a while and take a break from the team, and so on and so forth. And then we jump right into a mission that he's on. Now that he's broken away from the team, he's doing more covert ops. He's trying to stop things like the metahuman trafficking. A plot point which was started a bit in Young Justice season 2, where the Reach, the alien organization that came down to Earth to slowly invade by infiltrating our infrastructure, positioning themselves alongside the Light, the criminal organization, including Lex Luthor and a lot of other high-name villains, where they had a soft drink which sort of sped up the development of the metahuman gene in normal human beings, and through that they were doing metahuman trafficking with other planets and other criminal organizations. So that plot point is carrying on in Young Justice season 3, and we see Dick Grayson Nightwing being on a mission, one of the missions where they're actually following up on this thing as it's continuing to grow underground, and where people are still practicing it, even though the Light was defeated in season 2. So as far as character growth and where he's gone since season 2, we see him doing that. We also see Will Harper, as he now calls himself, Roy Harper's clone, who we discovered somewhere along the lines in season 1, is now sort of living with Artemis, and they are raising Will Harper and Cheshire's son, or I think it's a son, but I know that they had a child together, and they're busy raising that, and Artemis is living with them, helping them out, so on and so forth, and she's still active as a superhero, but under the identity of Tigress, which was her false undercover identity that she took up in Young Justice season 2. So everybody is basically mourning what they've lost. She's still dealing with the fact that Wally West died at the end of season 2, and she still has his dog. Things are visually portrayed in a way that gives up that exposition of how she's actually dealing with mourning for Wally West. And we also pick up with the Justice League on a mission in the planet Ran, where I'm not sure exactly what the mission was, but they get into a fight with some parademons, and there are one of the metahumans which are were a victim rather of the metahuman trafficking ring that's happening on Earth, is actually there, and doesn't look like a human being, and we see Black Lightning within that whole fight accidentally kill this metahuman, and that starts his story arc of that season of being broken by the fact that he actually killed an innocent, and his power is not working anymore because of the psychological impact of what happened. And we then go to the Justice League now having a meeting, and where we now see where Kelder has grown from season 2. He was previously Aqualad, he is now referred to as Aquaman, and he actually now leads the Justice League. And Miss Martian now leads the Young Justice team. And he has to deal with the fact that Black Lightning came there just to resign because he's dealing with this PTSD essentially of having killed an innocent on a Justice League mission. And Batman then starts The Outsiders, in that he expresses how he feels the idea of the Justice League is no longer effective as far as as far as the original intention as to why it was formed in the first place. In that the way things have changed politically and otherwise are now impeding the effectiveness that the Justice League as an organization and a symbol of protecting Earth. It's now impeding its success as to fulfilling that purpose. So he proposed that the Justice League be disbanded, and Aquaman now, along with other characters, basically objected to that, and he resigned along with a whole lot of other Justice League members, which those of us who know the comics know that he is now forming the Outsiders. But yeah, we get to that scene, and so the general feeling that I get from it is that it's more character focused, or at least in these early seasons. But we see a lot more of how characters are now developing and what individual issues that they're all grappling with, as a part as opposed to looking at things from a collective, looking at the team and what it's facing in terms of Earth threats. The Earth threats and everything else are still there, but they're not as high played as they were in previous seasons. We're actually focusing on individuals now. So I think, as I speculate, that it's got to do with the fact that, they are no longer bound by network television rules because it's now on a streaming service, much like how edgy and violent and graphic Titans is, on the same streaming service, in that, we hear things like fuck Batman, we see people die, we see, gory, gratuitous violence happening, bones breaking, so on and so forth. So I think, similar with Young Justice, they are now sort of being a little bit more creative. It's also a bit darker and a bit more edgy in terms of like the topics and things that they deal with, but we also see a little bit more creativity in terms of the dialogue. It's more fresh and realistic as far as what real people would say and do in certain situations. It's not trying to stick too strictly to a certain archetype or structure or rules. So a lot of the dialogue is quite interesting. It's quite something that actually kind of shocks you based on what you would have expected from the previous seasons and to what you're hearing now. It's hit or miss in that way, but it definitely does give a more mature and adult feel to the show in general. It's pretty good. We also see how Superboy has progressed and evolved as a character. He's kind of still dealing with his rage issues that he had coming from season 1. He now gets to he's also, his relationship with Megan, we see how that has also grown and where they are. Megan has come to, she's like, gradually getting to more of a place of acceptance to the fact that she's actually a white Martian, one of the Martians that are looked largely at as a villain in the DC universe, but she's always wanted to be considered or passed as a green Martian because those are the good. That's the internal conflict that she's always had to deal with as a person, but she's now accepting more and more the fact that yes, she is a white Martian, but it doesn't mean she's a villain. So she presents herself more as a white Martian these days, in the show. So we also see that character development. So yeah, I did enjoy it. The action scenes are still as entertaining as they used to be. The animation style is very much like what Young Justice season 2 was. It's really flowing from there, so that's a nice little stroke of continuity that they maintained. It's pretty cool. It looks like it's going to be a good show going forward. But that was a great show, great episode. I did enjoy it. It also ends off quite nicely as far as the story is concerned, because we also see Black Lightning continuing to deal with this trauma of having killed someone and so on and so forth. And the episode ends on a cliffhanger. I can't remember exactly what the topic was because again, I watched all 6 episodes. Unfortunately, I should have prepared better to watch each one of them again individually before these reviews. But it did end on a cliffhanger in that there was some hope, but not a victory, if you know what I mean. Because we also got introduced to a character that's currently being referred to as Halo Girl. She has a power to, regenerate and create shields and so on and so forth. So so the episode ended when one of the metahumans actually supposedly killed her quite violently as well, which caused further trauma to Black Lightning because he was there to witness that. But later on, she does regenerate and show everybody that she's back to life. So yeah, it's a lot darker and edgier and realer in those terms. But let's see where it goes. I think there's going to be about 23 episodes this season. I'm not sure. I'll do some reading up on that, and maybe I'll give you the answer on the next episode that I review. But that will be it for this particular one. So let me know what you guys think of it. Comment below, comment freely. And if you enjoyed this video, please click on the thumbs up icon to leave us a like. And if you'd like to see more from Nth-Level Entertainment, please click subscribe and be sure to click on that bell icon so you are notified each and every time I drop new content on this here channel. As usual, people, I have been Z the Entertainer. Thank you for chilling with me and spending this time. As usual, take care of each other, stay awesome, stay chasing your dreams to infinity and beyond.
Hey guys, thanks a lot. If you want to see some more from us, click here or click here.